Hey everyone, I noticed a lot of you who are watching and enjoying the content aren't subscribed yet. If you love spine-chilling stories, creepy encounters, and unexplained mysteries, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on the next terrifying upload. It really helps the channel grow and lets me keep bringing you more of the content you love. It was just another Friday night in our small town. Nothing special, you know. Me, Jake, Sarah, and Mike were hanging out at Jake's place like we always did. His parents were out of town, so we had the house to ourselves. We'd already watched a couple of movies and were getting bored. I remember scrolling through my phone, looking for something interesting, when Mike suggested we check out the dark web. We'd all heard stories about it, crazy stuff for sale, secret forums, all that jazz, but none of us had actually been there ourselves. Jake, always the tech whiz of our group, said he knew how to set it up. He grabbed his laptop and started downloading some special browser. While we waited, Sarah ordered pizza. The atmosphere was light, excited. We had no idea what we were about to get into. Once Jake had everything set up, we gathered around his laptop. The screen looked different, kind of basic. Jake explained it was for anonymity or something. We started clicking around, finding all sorts of weird stuff. Fake IDs, drugs, hacked accounts. It was like an illegal supermarket. At first, it was almost disappointing. We'd expected something more shocking, I guess. But then Jake found this link that looked different from the others. It was sleeker, more professional looking. Without much thought, we clicked on it. The page loaded slowly. I remember holding my breath, not sure why. When it finally appeared, it took us a moment to understand what we were seeing. It looked like an auction site, kind of like eBay, but fancier. Then we saw the items for sale. People. Real living people. There were men, women, even kids. Each had a photo, a brief description, and a price tag. Some had timers counting down. It was like a punch to the gut. This wasn't some fake site or a joke. This was real human trafficking happening right in front of us. I felt sick. Sarah actually ran to the bathroom to throw up. Mike just sat there, pale as a ghost. Jake kept scrolling, his face a mix of horror and disbelief. We were seeing something we were never meant to see, and it was awful. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. These were real people, with lives and families, being sold like cattle. I remember one girl, couldn't have been more than 15, with big scared eyes. Her timer was almost up. I felt helpless and angry all at once. That's when things went from bad to worse. The screen suddenly froze. We thought it was just the website acting up, but then this message popped up. You're next. It was like something out of a horror movie. Before we could react, the little light on Jake's webcam turned on. We hadn't even realized his laptop had one. Suddenly, our own faces appeared on the screen. We looked terrified, and rightfully so. Below each of our images was a starting bid price. Panic hit us like a tidal wave. Jake tried to close the browser, but it wouldn't respond. He tried to shut down the laptop, force quit, everything. Nothing worked. We were trapped. Our images now part of this nightmarish auction. We started freaking out. How did they find us? How did they access the webcam? What were we going to do? It felt like the walls were closing in. We had to get out of there. We grabbed our stuff and bolted from Jake's house, not even bothering to turn off the laptop. Outside, the normal Friday night scene felt surreal. People walking their dogs, kids riding bikes. Did they have any idea what was happening in the digital world just feet away? We decided to split up, thinking it would be harder for anyone to track us that way. I ran home, constantly looking over my shoulder. Every car that passed seemed suspicious. Every person on the street could be a threat. At home, I locked all the doors and windows. I unplugged my router and turned off my phone. Paranoid? Maybe. But after what we'd seen, I wasn't taking any chances. I spent the night pacing in my room, jumping at every creak and shadow. Sleep was impossible. My mind kept replaying what we'd seen, imagining what might happen to us. By morning, I was a wreck. I used my landline to call my friends, relieved beyond words when they all answered. We agreed to meet up and figure out what to do. We chose a small cafe in the next town over, thinking it would be safer than anywhere local. We must have looked like zombies when we met up. None of us had slept, and the fear was visible on our faces. We huddled in a corner booth, speaking in hushed tones. Jake had spent the night researching. He explained that our IP address was probably tracked when we accessed the site. That's how they found us. The webcam access likely came from some kind of malware that activated when we clicked the link. We debated going to the police, but we were scared. What if they didn't believe us? What if they thought we were somehow involved? And worst of all, what if the traffickers found out we'd talked to the authorities? In the end, we decided to lay low for a while. We came up with a plan: stay off social media, use only cash, avoid our usual hangouts. We'd check in with each other daily using burner phones. It felt like we were in some kind of spy movie, but the fear was very real. The next few weeks were the most stressful of my life. I jumped at every unexpected noise. I'd wake up in cold sweats, imagining being taken away to some unknown location. Every stranger on the street could be a potential threat. We kept to our plan, always watching over our shoulders. I lost weight from the stress. My parents were worried, but I couldn't tell them what was really going on. How could I explain something like this? Slowly, as days turned into weeks with no sign of trouble, we started to relax a little. Maybe it had been an empty threat, or maybe they'd moved on to easier targets. We started to venture out more, to reclaim our lives. But the experience had changed us. We couldn't forget what we'd seen on that website. Those faces, those prices, they haunted us. We started researching human trafficking, learning how prevalent it really was, even in our own country. We decided to do something about it. We started volunteering at local shelters and organizations that help trafficking victims. It wasn't much, but it felt like a way to fight back against the darkness we'd encountered. Now, months later, life has mostly returned to normal. But I'll never be the same. I'm more cautious online, more aware of the darker side of humanity. I appreciate my freedom in a way I never did before. I still think about those people on the auction site. I wonder if they ever got free, if they're safe now. And I'm grateful that I'm still here, able to tell this story and warn others. So if you're ever tempted to explore the darker corners of the internet, think twice. Some things, once seen, can't be unseen, and some clicks can't be undone. Stay safe out there, in the real world and the digital one. You never know what's lurking in the shadows, waiting for an unsuspecting victim to stumble upon it. Our curiosity almost cost us everything. Don't let yours do the same to you. I've always been into computers and cybersecurity. It's been my thing since I was a kid. I'd spent hours tinkering with code, learning about networks, and trying to understand how everything worked. As I got older, my interests only grew. I started working in it, but my real passion was still in the more complex side of things. One night, I was browsing some tech forums when I stumbled across a post about a mysterious game on the dark web. It caught my attention immediately. The post was vague, but it hinted at a series of challenging puzzles that only the most skilled hackers could solve. I was intrigued. I knew the risks of the dark web, but my curiosity got the better of me. I set up a secure connection and started searching. It took a while, but I finally found what I was looking for, an encrypted link to the game. When I first opened it, I was met with a simple interface. Just a black screen with a single line of code. It was a basic encryption puzzle, nothing I hadn't seen before. I cracked it easily and moved on to the next level. As I progressed, the challenges got harder. Each one required more skill and knowledge than the last. I was hooked. I spent hours working through the puzzles, losing track of time. It was exhilarating to put my skills to the test like this. But then things started to change. The puzzles weren't just about code anymore. They started asking me to do things in the real world. At first, it was simple stuff, accessing public Wi-Fi networks, that kind of thing. I didn't think much of it. I was too caught up in the thrill of the game. Then the tasks got more serious. I was asked to break into online accounts, manipulate banking systems. I knew it was wrong, but I convinced myself it was still just part of the game. I told myself I wasn't really hurting anyone. Looking back, I can't believe how naive I was. The final challenge came after days of intense puzzles. It seemed simple compared to what had come before, just hacking into a personal computer. I didn't think twice about it. I was so close to finishing the game, to proving I was as good as I thought I was. I worked on it for hours, breaking through layers of security. When I finally got in, I felt a rush of pride. I'd done it. I'd beaten the game. But that feeling didn't last long. As soon as I gained access, my own computer screen went black. Then a message appeared. It said I was now part of their network, their asset. I realized with horror that the computer I'd just hacked was my own. Panic set in. I tried to regain control, but it was useless. They had complete access to my system, my files, everything. I was locked out of my own life. I didn't know what to do. If I went to the authorities, I'd have to admit to all the illegal things I'd done as part of the game. But if I didn't, Who knew what these people would make me do? For days, I barely slept. I kept trying to find a way out, but every attempt just showed me how trapped I was. They had me, and they knew it. I started getting messages with instructions, small tasks at first, things that seemed harmless. But I knew it was only a matter of time before they asked for something bigger, something I couldn't come back from. Looking back, I can see all the warning signs I missed, all the red flags I ignored because I was too caught up in the challenge and proving how smart I was. I thought I was invincible, that I could handle anything the digital world threw at me. I was wrong. Now I'm stuck. Every day I wake up wondering what they'll ask me to do next. I've thought about running, about throwing away all my devices and disappearing, but I know they'd find me. They have too much on me now. I keep hoping I'll find a way out, that I'll be able to outsmart them somehow. But deep down, I know the truth. I'm not the player anymore. I'm just another piece in someone else's game. If I could go back, I'd tell myself to walk away. To remember that not every challenge needs to be accepted, not every puzzle needs to be solved. But I can't go back. All I can do now is try to survive, to find a way through this mess I've created for myself. I wanted to prove I was the best, that I could conquer any digital challenge. Instead, I've become a cautionary tale, a reminder that in the world of hacking and cybercrime, the line between games and reality is thinner than we think. And once you cross it, there's no easy way back. So here I am, trapped in a nightmare of my own making. Every keystroke monitored, every online move watched. I don't know what the future holds, but I know it's not what I had planned for myself. All because of a game I should never have played. I hope someone out there can learn from my mistake. The dark web isn't a playground, and hacking isn't just a game. The consequences are real, and they can change your life in ways you never imagined. Trust me, I know. I'd heard about the dark web from some friends and decided to check it out. I'm pretty good with computers, so I figured I could handle it. I downloaded Tor and started browsing around. Most of it was pretty tame, just weird forums and sketchy marketplaces. I wasn't planning on buying anything, but then I saw this listing for an old piece of computer hardware. It was dirt cheap and seemed harmless enough. On impulse, I decided to go for it. The whole process was a bit nerve-wracking, dealing with cryptocurrency and anonymous sellers. But I managed to complete the purchase and tried to forget about it. A few days later, a small package arrived at my dorm. Inside was the item I'd bought, just an old circuit board, nothing special. I plugged it into my computer out of curiosity, but it didn't seem to do anything. I tossed it in a drawer and went about my day. That's when things started getting weird. At first, it was just little things. I'd notice my webcam light turning on by itself sometimes. My browser history would show sites I didn't remember visiting. I chalked it up to glitches or forgetfulness, but then I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. It had personal details about me, stuff that wasn't public. My class schedule, my parents' names, even the password to my school account. I started to freak out a bit. How could they know all that? I changed all my passwords and ran a bunch of antivirus scans, but nothing came up. The next day, I got a text from an unknown number with more private info. This time it included my credit card number and home address. That's when I realized I was in way over my head. I tried to track down the dark web marketplace where I'd made the purchase, but it had vanished without a trace. Same with the seller's profile. It was like it never existed. My computer kept acting up. Files would move around on their own. The webcam would activate randomly. I'd wake up to find my laptop open when I was sure I'd closed it. I started getting paranoid. I felt like I was being watched all the time, in class, at the cafeteria, even alone in my room. I'd see people on their phones and wonder if they were spying on me somehow. My grades started slipping as I spent more and more time trying to figure out what was happening. I barely slept, staying up late scouring forums and tech sites for answers. But nothing I tried seemed to help. The messages kept coming, each one more personal than the last. They knew about conversations I'd had in private, things I'd only told my closest friends. It was like they could see and hear everything I did. I considered going to the police, but what would I even tell them? That I bought something sketchy on the dark web and now I was being stalked by hackers? They'd probably just laugh me off. My friends started to notice something was wrong. I was jumpy and distracted all the time. I stopped hanging out, afraid that whoever was watching me might target them too. I felt completely alone. One night, I got an email that pushed me over the edge. It had a video attachment, footage from my own webcam of me sleeping in my dorm room. The message said they had hours of recordings like this. That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I packed a bag, withdrew all the cash I could from my account, and bought a bus ticket to my parents' house. I left my laptop and phone behind, too scared to bring them with me. I'm writing this from my childhood bedroom, using my old desktop computer. I haven't gone online or used any electronics besides this ancient PC. I'm too afraid of being found again. I don't know what to do next. I can't hide here forever, but I'm terrified of going back to school or trying to resume my normal life. Those hackers are still out there, and they know everything about me. I keep thinking about that stupid circuit board. What was it really? Some kind of advanced spyware? A beacon to alert hackers to a potential target? I'll probably never know for sure. All I know is that my life is ruined because of one dumb decision. I thought I was being careful, but I had no idea what I was getting into. The dark web isn't a game or a fun experiment. It's dangerous, and the people there are serious. I hope someone reads this and learns from my mistake. Don't mess around with things you don't understand. Don't assume you're smarter than the bad guys out there. And for your own sake, stay away from the dark web. I'm not sure what my future looks like now. Will I ever feel safe using a computer again? Can I go back to school and pretend none of this happened? How long before I stop looking over my shoulder everywhere I go? Maybe someday I'll find a way to fight back against whoever did this to me. But for now, I'm just trying to disappear. If you're reading this, learn from my story. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Stay safe out there. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. It all started when I was browsing the dark web out of curiosity. I'd heard stories about it and wanted to see for myself what all the fuss was about. After downloading Tor and figuring out how to access onion sites, I stumbled upon a forum that seemed pretty innocuous at first. The forum was called Future Crimes, and I assumed it was just some role-playing thing where people came up with fictional crime scenarios. I scrolled through a few threads, not thinking much of it, but then I noticed how eerily specific some of the posts were. They included details like exact addresses, names, and time frames for various crimes, mostly break-ins and robberies, but some violent stuff too. I told myself it was just creative writing, but something about it unsettled me. I kept reading, and that's when I saw a post about a murder that had happened in my town just last week. The details matched the news reports perfectly, but the forum post was dated 3 days before it actually occurred. My heart started racing. This couldn't be real, right? I desperately wanted to believe it was all an elaborate hoax. But as I dug deeper into the forum, I found more and more posts that lined up with actual crimes that had been reported. The specificity was chilling, details that hadn't been released to the public. I spent hours combing through the forum, trying to make sense of it. Were these people somehow predicting crimes, or worse, planning them? I couldn't wrap my head around it. I thought about contacting the police, but what would I even say? I had no proof of anything illegal, just a bunch of forum posts. That's when I saw it. A new thread titled with my street name. My hands shook as I clicked on it. The first post listed my full name and address. It described my daily routine in detail, when I left for work, when I usually got home, even where I liked to go for coffee on weekends. I felt sick to my stomach. Someone was watching me. The thread went on to outline plans for breaking into my house next week when I'd be out of town for work. They knew about my trip before I'd even booked the flights. I slammed my laptop shut and sat there in shock for a while. This couldn't be happening. I must have fallen asleep and this was all a nightmare. But when I opened my computer again, the forum was still there. I didn't know what to do. I thought about calling the police, but what would I tell them? That I found a creepy website? I had no real evidence of a crime. Besides, accessing the dark web probably wasn't something I should admit to. I decided to change up my routine, hoping to throw off whoever was watching me. I left for work at different times, took alternate routes, and canceled my upcoming trip. But every time I checked the forum, there were new posts tracking my movements. They knew when I went to the grocery store. They knew I'd called out sick from work. It was like they could see my every move. I became paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder and checking for hidden cameras. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The forum became an obsession. I checked it compulsively, terrified of what I might see but unable to stop. After a particularly sleepless night, I broke down and went to the police. I tried to explain about the forum, about the posts detailing my life, but I could tell they didn't believe me. Without access to the dark web, I couldn't even show them the site. They probably thought I was having some kind of mental break. I felt utterly alone. I couldn't tell my friends or family. They'd think I was crazy too. And I was starting to wonder if maybe I was. Maybe this was all in my head somehow. But every time I checked, The forum was still there, still posting about me. I considered moving, changing my name, trying to disappear, but the forum seemed to know my thoughts before I even had them. A new post appeared. Subject considering relocation. Contingency plans in place. I'm writing this now because I don't know what else to do. Maybe by sharing my story, someone out there will believe me. Maybe someone knows what this forum is and can help. Or maybe this is my way of leaving a record, in case something happens to me. I don't know who's behind this, or what they want. I don't know how they're getting their information or why they targeted me. All I know is that I'm afraid to leave my house, afraid to stay in my house, afraid to do anything. The worst part is the waiting to see what will happen. Will they break in? Will they hurt me? Or will they just keep watching, keep posting, keep slowly driving me insane with fear and paranoia? I checked the forum one last time before posting this. There's a new thread. Subject making post online about forum. Proceeding as planned. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I know they're watching. They're always watching. And they know too much. As I finish typing this, my hands are shaking. I'm not sure if sharing my story was the right move, but I felt like I had to do something. Anything. Just as I'm about to hit post, my screen suddenly goes black. My heart stops. Then a message appears. We see you. We know you're trying to expose us. That's not how this works. You have 24 hours to delete everything. Or we make you disappear. Your choice. The message vanishes as quickly as it appeared. My screen returns to normal, but I'm frozen in place. They've been in my computer this whole time, watching me write this very post. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to delete everything and pray they leave me alone. But another part knows that even if I do, they won't stop. They'll never stop. So I'm going to hit post anyway. I'm going to pack a bag, withdraw all the cash I can, and just start driving. I don't know where I'll go or what I'll do, but I have to try something. If you're reading this, please believe me. I lost my job a few months ago. Bills piled up and debt collectors wouldn't stop calling. I was desperate for a way out. Late one night, after a few too many drinks, I found myself browsing the dark web. I'd heard about it from a tech-savvy friend who warned me to stay away. But curiosity got the better of me. I stumbled upon a forum that caught my eye. Discreet services, it said. As I scrolled through the posts, I realized it was full of people offering to do illegal things for money. One thread stood out. Hitman services, no questions asked. I laughed to myself. This had to be a joke, right? No way this was real. In my alcohol-fueled haze, I thought it'd be funny to submit my own name and address as a target. I figured nothing would come of it anyway. I woke up the next morning with a pounding headache, barely remembering what I'd done. As the days passed, I forgot all about that night on the dark web. A week later, I noticed something odd. A black car kept showing up wherever I went. At first, I brushed it off as coincidence, but after a few days, I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. Then things got weirder. I came home one day to find a small package on my doorstep. No return address, just my name scrawled in messy handwriting. Inside was a single bullet and a note with next week's date circled in red. My stomach dropped. Suddenly that night on the dark web came flooding back. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a prank, right? But the strange occurrences kept coming. Cryptic text messages from unknown numbers. More gifts left at my door, each one more threatening than the last. I tried to convince myself it wasn't real. But deep down I knew. The request I made as a joke had been taken seriously. There was a hitman out there, and I was a target. Panic set in. I had to find a way to cancel the hit. But how? I had no idea who was behind this or how to contact them. I scoured the dark web forum where it all started, hoping to find answers. But the thread was gone, like it never existed. I posted frantically, begging for help, but got no response. Meanwhile, the countdown continued. The circled date on that first note was getting closer. I was running out of time. I barely slept, jumping at every sound. That black car was always there, lurking just out of reach. I changed my routine, varied my schedule, anything to throw off my pursuer. But they always seemed one step ahead. With just days left, I was a nervous wreck. I considered going to the police, but what would I tell them? That I accidentally hired a hitman to kill myself? They'd think I was crazy. I thought about running, but where would I go? How long could I keep looking over my shoulder? The night before the circled date, I sat in my darkened apartment, a baseball bat clutched in my sweaty hands. Every creak of the building made me flinch. Was this how it would end? As the sun rose, I realized I'd made it through the night. But my relief was short-lived. The day had only just begun. I peeked out my window, half expecting to see the black car. But the street was empty, too empty. The usual morning bustle was missing. It felt like the calm before a storm. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your email." With shaking hands, I opened my inbox. There was a new message. Subject line blank. The body contained just 4 words. Contract canceled. Consider yourself lucky. I stared at the screen, not daring to believe it. Was it over? Just like that? For days I waited for the other shoe to drop. But nothing happened. No more strange packages. No more cryptic messages. The black car disappeared. Slowly, life returned to normal. But I was changed. I never touched the dark web again. I found a new job, worked hard to pay off my debts the right way. Sometimes on quiet nights, I still think about those terrifying weeks, about how close I came to the edge. It taught me a valuable lesson. Be careful what you wish for, even in jest. Because in the darkest corners of the internet, someone might just take you seriously. I don't know if what happened to me was real or some elaborate hoax. Part of me doesn't want to know. But one thing's for sure, I'll never forget the fear I felt, the sleepless nights, the constant looking over my shoulder. If you're ever tempted to explore the dark web, take it from me. Some things are better left in the shadows. You never know what might follow you back into the light. I've always been a thrill seeker, but lately nothing seemed to get my heart racing anymore. Skydiving, bungee jumping, even those extreme haunted houses, they all felt tame. That's when I stumbled across this weird site on the dark web. It caught my eye right away. Custom experiences, it promised. The site looked sketchy, but I was intrigued. They offered to create personalized, intense scenarios for clients willing to pay. My mind started racing with possibilities. After browsing around, I decided to go for it. What did I have to lose? I figured it was probably just an elaborate prank or scam anyway. I paid using cryptocurrency and filled out their questionnaire. For my experience, I requested a realistic home invasion scenario. I wanted to feel genuine fear, to be chased by intruders through my own house. But I made sure to specify that it should all be fake, just really good actors and special effects. A few days went by, and nothing happened. I started to think I'd been ripped off. Then one night I was relaxing at home when I heard a loud crash downstairs. My first thought was that the experience was starting. I felt a surge of excitement mixed with nervousness. This was going to be intense. I crept to the top of the stairs and peered down. 3 masked figures were in my living room. They looked intimidating in all black, carrying what looked like weapons. I had to admit, they nailed the scary intruder look. One of them spotted me and shouted. I ran to my bedroom and slammed the door, heart pounding. This felt so real. I could hear them stomping up the stairs. I decided to play along and crawled under the bed. The door burst open and I saw boots walk by. Someone yanked up the bedspread and rough hands grabbed my ankles, dragging me out. That's when things started to feel off. The hands gripping me were way too forceful. As they hauled me up, one of them hit me hard in the stomach. The pain was definitely real. Panic set in as I realized this wasn't a game anymore. These weren't actors, they were actual criminals. Somehow, the dark website had connected them with my info and paid them to attack me for real. I started fighting back desperately. I managed to break free and ran for the door. One of them tackled me in the hallway. We struggled and tumbled down the stairs together. I hit the bottom hard, but adrenaline kept me going. I scrambled up and sprinted for the back door. They were right behind me. I could feel their hands grabbing at my shirt. I burst out into the backyard and vaulted over the fence. My neighbors' houses were dark. I wanted to scream for help, but I was gasping for breath. I ran down the alley, my bare feet slapping the pavement. I glanced back and saw 2 of them still chasing me. Where was the third one? Suddenly headlights blinded me. A van screeched to a stop, blocking my path. The back doors flew open and the third attacker lunged out at me. I changed direction, darting between houses. I had to find somewhere to hide. My lungs were burning. I couldn't keep running much longer. I spotted a tool shed in someone's backyard. It was my only chance. I dove inside and pulled the door shut, trying to quiet my ragged breathing. Footsteps crunched on gravel outside. I curled up in the corner, willing myself to disappear. The door rattled. I held my breath. After what felt like hours, the noises faded. I stayed frozen in place, terrified to move. Eventually, the sky started to lighten. When I was sure they were gone, I crept out and made my way to a gas station. I called the police from there. They took my statement, but I could tell they were skeptical. I probably sounded crazy. I was too scared to go back to my house. I checked into a motel and tried to figure out what to do next. I kept replaying the night in my head, wondering how things had gone so wrong. I shouldn't have trusted that website. I'd given them all my information, told them exactly what I wanted. They'd used it to set up a real attack. But why? Was this all just for sick entertainment? Or was there more to it? I was paranoid for weeks afterward. I jumped at every sound, always looking over my shoulder. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were still out there, waiting to finish what they'd started. Eventually, I moved to a new city and tried to put it all behind me, but I still have nightmares about that night. I'll never go looking for thrills like that again. Some experiences are better left in your imagination. I often wonder if others fell for the same trap. How many people are out there right now, thinking they're about to have an exciting adventure, not knowing the danger they're in? I want to warn them, but I don't know how. All I can say is be careful what you wish for, especially on the dark web. Those custom experiences might be more real than you bargained for, and once the game starts, you can't just hit pause or turn it off. You have to see it through to the end, if you survive that long. I stumbled across some dark web forums while browsing late one night. I was bored and looking for a thrill, something to break up the monotony of my daily life. That's when I first heard about the Red Room. At first, I didn't believe it was real, just another creepy internet urban legend, right? But the more I dug, the more intrigued I became. People swore they'd seen these live streams where horrible things happened. I told myself it had to be fake, just actors putting on a show for shock value. After a few weeks of lurking, I finally worked up the courage to try accessing one of these Red Room streams myself. I followed the instructions I'd pieced together, downloading special browsers, connecting through multiple VPNs, the works. My heart was racing as I navigated to the site. When I got there, it looked pretty bare bones, just a video player and a chat box. The stream was set to start in 10 minutes. I hesitated, my cursor hovering over the enter button. I stumbled across some dark web forums while browsing late one night. I was bored and looking for a thrill, something to break up the monotony of my daily life. That's when I first heard about the Red Room. At first, I didn't believe it was real, just another creepy internet urban legend, right? But the more I dug, the more intrigued I became. People swore they'd seen these live streams where horrible things happened. I told myself it had to be fake, just actors putting on a show for shock value. After a few weeks of lurking, I finally worked up the courage to try accessing one of these Red Room streams myself. I followed the instructions I'd pieced together, downloading special browsers, connecting through multiple VPNs, the works. My heart was racing as I navigated to the site. When I got there, it looked pretty bare bones, just a video player and a chat box. The stream was set to start in 10 minutes. I hesitated, my cursor hovering over the enter button. Did I really want to see this? But curiosity got the better of me. I clicked. At first, nothing much happened. Just an empty room with a chair. Then a hooded figure dragged someone in. They were struggling, clearly terrified. I felt a chill run down my spine. This looked way too real. As things progressed, I tried to convince myself it was all an act. The victim had to be in on it, right? But something about their terror seemed so genuine. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The victim was wearing a watch, a really distinctive one with a bright blue face. I recognized it immediately. It belonged to my CO worker, Sarah. Sarah had gone missing about a week ago. Everyone assumed she'd just taken off without telling anyone. But now, seeing that watch, a horrible realization hit me. This was real. Sarah was really there, really suffering. I started to panic. What should I do? Call the police? But how could I explain how I'd accessed this stream? Would they even believe me? My hands shaking, I tried to take screenshots to gather any evidence I could. But nothing would save. The site blocked it somehow. I don't know how long I sat there, horrified, trying desperately to think of some way to help. By the time I snapped out of it and decided to risk calling the authorities, the stream had ended. The site went dark. I had no proof of what I'd seen. For days afterwards, I was a wreck. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's terrified face. I battled with myself over whether to go to the police. But what could I tell them? I had no evidence, just the ramblings of some guy who admitted to accessing illegal dark websites. I started jumping at every sound, convinced someone was watching me. Had they seen me in the stream's chat? Did they know I'd witnessed something I shouldn't have? I tried to act normal at work, but it was torture. Everyone was still talking about Sarah's disappearance, wondering where she'd gone. I wanted to scream the truth, but who would believe me? As the days passed, my paranoia grew. I was sure I was being followed. Cars lingered too long outside my apartment. My internet kept cutting out at strange times. Was it just my imagination running wild, or were they coming for me next? I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit around waiting to disappear like Sarah, but I felt trapped. If I went to the authorities, I'd be admitting to accessing illegal content. If I didn't, I might be the next victim. In desperation, I tried to find those dark web forums again. Maybe someone there would know what to do. But all the links were dead ends now. It was like the whole thing had been scrubbed from existence. That's when I realized I'd never be free of this. Even if nothing happened to me, I'd always be looking over my shoulder, wondering if today was the day they'd come for me. The knowledge of what I'd seen would haunt me forever.